There's a lot about my story that just resonates in terms of I've seen it and I've witnessed it personally. Like I've never been down to the depth of darkness where, like not living was brighter than living, right?
Mental health in general, there's all these stigmas and everything to where, it's weak to ask for help, especially for
When I
men.
started Suicide Sucks as a nonprofit, I started finding people that were suicidal and they were asking, well, can you help me? So the whole point is really focusing on the gaps and the challenges in the mental health support for military veterans, first responders. Um, in general, my whole focus is really figuring out suicide prevention. I lost my brother to suicide in 2009. He's joined the military, and then within like a year and a half, he had taken his life. Which I think systemically, the challenges growing up were probably had a lot more to do with that than the military. But during that period of life, there's a lot of decisions being made, a
Yeah.
lot of challenges you're facing. So um, originally, his experience just kind of opened my eyes to what's going on in the industry, what's going on with support models, and shortly after that, my mom had remarried around that time period, and she had married a firefighter, and he went through a bunch of PTSD experiences and called the EAP. EAP says, "I can't help you," and just kind of highlighting the fact that the models supporting those in these roles that are exposed to so much just aren't adequately taking care of the problems and the challenges. So he fortunately in that EAP situation referred him out to a trauma therapist and was able to get him some support. And he lives to tell the tale and talks about peer support and just openly advocates for mental health being utilized. And part of what my mission is and what the company that's that we're working on here are doing are streamlining and removing really those friction points, so guys can get more help quicker, better, faster. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, first off, man, obviously deepest condolences to you and the family. And it's, we sadly live in a time now where I'd be pretty shocked to come across an individual who hasn't came across a close family member or friend that, you know, suicide has been connected somewhere across the lines. And, I mean, it's obviously a huge, huge problem, but you really, I mean, mental health in general, like, not, not speaking specifically on the veterans community, but mental health in general, there's all these stigmas and everything to where, it's weak to ask for help, especially for men. I mean, I, I should come off, I'm like in no way saying that women don't have mental health challenges, but men are expected to hold it all in, right? To be the ones that deal with it on their own. Where it is, historically speaking, it's easier for a woman to say, "Hey, I need help," versus if a guy, if I'm with a bunch of buddies, like, granted, I've surrounded myself with some good buddies, so I wouldn't hear it, but 10, 15 years ago, if a guy says, "Hey, I'm in a bad place, man. You could you help me out?" And there's a huge likelihood that they're like, "Oh man, stop being a bitch." And that's fact. There is no denying that.
yeah,
And that's,
yeah,
and that's so embedded, in the culture, just across the board now. But definitely so in the military. I mean, at an unbelievable level. And I'll say right off the bat, I did 6 years in the Army as an infantryman, with 12 months of that being spent in Afghanistan. And, I've now, I think our unit has now lost more to suicide than we did to deaths in theater.
yeah.
And, and so, you know, definitely, especially in your combat more focused, MOSs in the military, you really run into this. And I'm not even speaking just to the mental health thing, but just getting something fixed is a sign of weakness. Like if my knee hurts and if I go ask for help, they're like, dude, just drink some damn water. Here's some Tylenol. I mean, literally, I remember going to the medic station I had taken an Akio to my leg at like 40 miles an hour. So an Akio is like a sled, and we used them in Alaska to you do cross country skis, you pull an Akio that has like a tent set up in it. Well, we were doing like some range prep, and they were filling this Akio with sandbags, and somebody way up above me tossed the sandbag in, and it caused the Akio to shift and shoot down the hill. Well, nobody yelled, "Watch out!" And this thing just plowed into my shins, and ended up completely chipping like part of my like whatever bone your shin bone is completely like chipped, and I could move it around inside. And I remember going to the to the aid station, and my leg was like black, and I was like, hey, what's gonna happen? Like, they're like, what do you mean? Drink some water, dude. Here's some ibuprofen. And I just carried on, and I have heard, if you have a chipped bone, there isn't much they can do. But that specifically speaks to the usual drink water, carry on mentality that you hear a lot in the military world. And there's probably another version of it that civilians say about, oh, dude, you'll be fine, get over it. But no, it's obviously, a huge, huge, huge problem. And it's so crazy to think about it, right? Like, to think about the reality that if I ask for help, if I come out and blatantly I'm like, dude, I'm not good, like I'm in a bad place, there's like this like made up world where people think that's a sign of weakness. It's like the literal polar. I mean, you can't get more opposite than if you were asking for help, that is the greatest sign of strength, because you're putting aside everything. Like you're ready for like, hey, somebody's gonna call me out on it and be like, oh, you're just being weak, deal with it. Like I'm beyond that. I don't care anymore what you say. I am now at the point where no, this is a sign of strength, and I think that's something we really need to like drive home.
You have some buddies, and you've had some posts about that, and I've been reading just some of the stuff you've done, the content you guys have putting out there, sharing some of these stories that are just really horrific, and then the level of support and the level of reaction is just kind of appalling. And as a U.S. citizen, where I had three brothers in the military, and I had just all the love and respect for anyone that's putting their life on the line, and to know that we're not taking care of the problem in the right way. And so that's bothered me over the years, and I've just, as I investigate that and I talk to senior officials and, different colonels and whatnot, I've heard that it just kind of is the mantra. Like if you do accept help, you'll be prohibited from promotional opportunities or from certain things, right? And that's coming from the top down, when in reality, like we don't have any problems like keeping the trucks oiled and maintained, but we can't do any preventative maintenance on our own, brain.
Yeah.
We need just as much maintenance mentality and prevention with our physical body and our mental and our spiritual selves as we think about our equipment, right? And if from the top down it was treated that way, I think we'd be much better off.
No, for sure. And I mean, I will be firm, and I've realized this because somebody had mentioned it to me offline the other day, that my post kind of may be hurting recruiting, like hurting people from wanting to support the military, and by no means are the few hundred likes and some shares affecting recruiting for the military. But the funny thing about that is, I would tell you right now, and I've said it, I loved serving, and with all my health issues, with everything that's wrong with me inside, physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever, I would go back and do it all again, knowing that I would go through the same trauma, the same BS. I would still do it again, knowing where I'm going to be right now, that I'm at a point where I still have my struggles, but I'm at a point now where I know that, hey, this new purpose is to raise awareness and to fight for others, that, hey, even if we're all broken, we're not all broken. And that's because that is a thing with veterans, like, oh, they're all broken. Like, yeah, every human on earth under that logic is broken. Everybody. And this is why, the mental health thing is a global spectrum. Everybody has traumas. Military probably has a different, level to some extent. It's just a different kind of trauma. I don't want to like compare traumas. I don't like that, but
Well, there are
they're
different traumas.
unique
Like to be fair, right? Like
for
I
sure.
can't describe experiences how I was treated or something like relationship wise and compare that to an IED or an explosion and the TBIs, right? There's
For
actual
sure.
physical traumas. But
No,
I want to go back to what you said really quick, just in terms of like, I mean, hearing you say I would do it again, right? Where does that come from? What inspires you enough about the mission, what you were about that makes you say, no, I would do it again?
for sure. So, no, it's an interesting topic, right? There's obviously like this sense of patriotism, which everybody will say. Most people go right off the bat to the patriotism, serving the country and whatnot. But um, I don't think mine is to that extent. I'll be the first to say our government is the farthest thing from perfect. I do believe that America is probably the greatest nation on earth, and that there's a reason that every other nation their citizens want to come here. But again, we have our faults, as do most. Nowhere is perfect, and so I would do it again. It probably doesn't come from the patriotic side. I'm a patriotic guy. I truly believe in this nation, despite all its flaws, and there's flaws every year. It doesn't matter who's in office; those flaws exist every year. But really, it comes down to the knowledge of the community, the the people that I've actually met post service. I have formed relationships with at such a great level that is actually beyond the relationships that I formed with dudes I deployed downrange with, which probably isn't the standard story. Most would be a lot of the guys you deploy downrange with, you have a relationship with that is at a, indescribable level. And I do have that with several of them. I don't stay in contact as much, but deployments can be different things for different people. And I know for us, for my deployment, we were a QRF platoon, so a quick reaction force. And so, had to be ready to roll out the wire within under 10 minutes or whatever the time was, right? Like guns up, go, boom. And our primary job was working with EOD. And so we were primarily going to bomb sites, or whether they were we had to blow it in place where it, hadn't hit somebody, or we were responding to a vehicle that had already been blown, or something along those lines. So kind of covered the whole spectrum of everything IED related. And we were damn busy. We were doing 16 plus hour days, patrol after patrol after patrol. When you're in a vehicle with somebody in a high threat environment, you get pretty sick of people pretty fast. Like we lived in a tent, like we didn't have walls. We'd put up poncho liners, but that's not a wall. You could just push it over and you hear everybody, and when the fighting season ended, so kind of in the wintertime, a lot of your Taliban fighters go back into Pakistan for more of their amenities and more proper westernized, I guess you kind of westernized creature comforts. And so they'll leave Afghanistan in the winter. This is cold. Everyone thinks like pictures. Most people confuse Iraq with like, they think Afghanistan is similar to Iraq. Like they think really flat desert. When Afghanistan is like one of the most mountainous nations in the world. You could literally see the Himalayas from different parts of the country. And so we were in a valley, sure, but I had mountains on every side of us, and it gets cold. We had feet of snow. And so the wintertime, you go from, you're going from these 20-hour days in the summer to zip, and now you're surrounded by these people. Everyone wants to go home. You start like disliking people that you're very close to. Like we were getting into fights with each other, throwing tables at each other because it's the way it is. And I would bet there's a lot of deployments that are that way for people. Um, but I'm like so long-winding this answer. But yeah, I have great relationships with most of those, and I've actually made amends with some of those people that we had falling outs. Like I've made amends with a lot of those people because that's a time in all of our lives that we'll never forget, right? The best and worst year of my life. I don't really want to say the best year because I have 4 children. I love being a father, and I've done so many amazing things since then. But there's something that I can't explain about my year in theater. And so maybe it's not the best year, but you're in a state of so much adrenaline that you're living under this just massive dopamine rush pretty much the whole time. Maybe
Yeah.
this is just me as like some odd infantryman, because that's probably most people probably wouldn't want that. But that year, as horrible as it was in some ways, also was this experience that so many people chase post service, and that's why so many veterans get into motorcycle accidents and car accidents, is because they're chasing that feeling, that sensation that you get when an IED goes off, or you're in a firefight, or rockets are going by. There's a level of excitement to it, even in the fear, because you're at your most primal self, right? It's as close as you can get to primal. And so when I separated, I medically retired, have a nightmare of a story. I didn't want anything to do with the military community, actually. And so that could also play into effect why I don't have the close relationships with some of those people, even though it was a new unit at that point. But when I finally realized, oh, I'm meant to tell stories in this space through film, and now by sharing my story more, just out, in the open. But I've met and connected with so many individuals that I've been able to impact their life as a nonprofit leader or as a volunteer helping another nonprofit. And that is why I would do it again, is for the guys after they get out, for the veterans. I wouldn't necessarily do it back for the people active, which sure, I could speak on things now if I was able to go back with knowledge, but it's really knowing that how many lives I've impacted post service. I would do that again because we need people sharing the wins. And I'll be the first to say I'm guilty of a lot of my films on my website and films I've done. My job is to make the audience cry because I need them to open up their wallets to help a nonprofit to get more guys the help they need. And so in theory, I am taking advantage of the audience by showing an emotional thing. And while there is a lot of emotion, there's also a hell of a lot of wins. And that's where I really want to start seeing this shift in the veteran conversations is, listen, this is no dig against the military. This is sure a dig against the post side or the end transitioning period of the military. I'll dig that all day long about how I disagree with the TAPS process, but it's really pretty much your last 6 months in service to what happens to you after that we really need to change the narrative and the focus. Everybody's broken, period, end of story. Doesn't matter if you're 15 years old, 100 years old. Most people in life have something wrong with them. But there's this narrative that's always, oh, we shouldn't hire this veteran because he's broken. He's probably got PTSD. Like, get that out of your head. Some of the best leaders and entrepreneurs are veterans, and it's really how do we share more of the good, right? Like the
Yeah.
success.
Right.
I was told I'd never work again, never would work again, wouldn't go to school again, would barely be a dad again, needed this. I have beat every single one of those things. In pain, the same pain I was in then, the same nausea that I was in, the same struggles. Those haven't gotten easier. My issues haven't gotten easier. They've gotten worse in the logic of several things. And my mental health, in a way, has gotten worse, but at the same time, better. Hard to explain that one. But in theory,
Yeah.
am a success story to what you're told and you get out. You're always told, oh, you'll never have this purpose again. You're never doing. It's always never, 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 never. Some type of never, and people believe it. And so go back into the civilian world and
Why are
just
they telling you that message? What's the point of that? Why
right,
is that?
right. Well, here's the weird. So outside of mine with the medical stuff, because I don't see really the benefit or what the purpose would have been, unless it's obviously just to push super a lot of money into the pharmaceutical world, which I guess could make sense. But for those like getting out, the hope always is going to be from recruiting is that if you scare somebody enough like that the civilian world sucks, that they'll be like, okay, I'll re-enlist, I'll stay. Right? We do need a strong lethal fighting force. There's no question there. And I think, it's obviously always dependent on leadership and who's in the who's leading the nation, right? On the lethality of what the nation's military does. But the military, the United States military, always has money for more. Always has money for more people to join, and so it's better to keep somebody in who you've already invested millions of dollars in than to get another person, because people don't realize like the investment cost for an active duty person is insane. If you dive into the numbers, how much it costs our nation to train one individual. I mean, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars, like before the first year of service, in terms of like what's been put into them through training, through housing, food, and everything in benefits. And if that person then like fails out in the first year and a half, like that's a lot of taxpayers' dollars that technically went to waste. And so the longer you keep somebody in that's been in, the better they know the job there, can train future people. It's a win-win. And so that's really where a lot of that mentality comes from is, hey, you're never going to do anything this good. You're never going to be better out here. You're never going to make as much money. When that's really, we need to be shifting that narrative. I actually think that when people are getting out, if we're hearing the opposite of that, like, guys, there is a beautiful life to be lived out there. Thank you so much for your 3 years, for your 6 years, for your 25 years of service, however long it was. You've got another purpose out there, and it's to help other veterans, to spread your story, to train, do whatever. It doesn't even have to be in the veteran community.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to find your skills, find your strengths, find your passion in creation and developing your own talents and become an identity on your own, right? Express some level of identity with your creative capacity and create good and go do good, be good, right? That's part of the American dream.
No, and literally, if we actually promoted the people getting out and we're excited for everyone transitioning out, we would have better recruitment numbers because when we're pushing out, the rank that probably separates the most is probably that E4, E5, right? If you serve one enlistment period, it's usually 3 years. So say you serve 3 years, and then it's usually several months based off of how long your training was. So say you serve 3.5 years. Most likely you're an E4 if you're on the enlisted side. The E4 in the Army is often referred to as the sham shield. You've dealt with all the bullshit your first few years, and your last year you're like, listen, man, I'm kicking back. I'm going to hide in the closet. You privates do all the mopping, but they don't have the responsibility or whatnot of as a non-commissioned officer. And so the rank of specialist is kind of your most like sour rank, where you're kind of like, oh, I'm about to be a leader, but I also can still like get out of things. But they're the ones transitioning the most. They're also the ones who will be the most vocal when they don't like something. And so we are the people that are transitioning the most. And I don't know this number for sure, but I would almost guarantee it, because the 6 years I was in, I saw more E4s get out than any other rank. And so these are the people that are then going to their hometowns, which they only served 3 years. So if they joined at 17 or 18, they're back at 22. Their friend they went to school with, they still could influence them to join at 22 years old. Sure, most join at 18 if you're enlisted and not the officer world. You'll join at 18. I didn't join till I was 21 or 22. And so you have the influence to have others join based off your words. So like, if we're always down in these guys, like, oh, you're never going to have this purpose, you're never going to have this community, you are hurting your recruiting in the grand scheme of things. Like, you are literally hurting the number
it sounds
of
like
people
it's
that are
just
going to come
all
in.
around. It's going to be a better experience. Just not be so negative on the leaving and on the capabilities of, basically, civilian life after being a soldier and being a part of the brotherhood that's there. It sounds like through a lot of your creative expression and your work filming and making motivational footage for different nonprofits that you've supported. You've come across maybe programs or different ways of doing it successfully, and I'm curious to hear about some of those stories of like how do you see these wins, and where do you see a chance for even some of the videos you've done to be more on the we're winning, we're doing good things in terms of transitioning the soldiers effectively
Yeah.
to civilian life.
Yeah. So if we go way back into the history of nonprofits for veterans, there's two that stand out the most, the American Legion and the VFW. If I was to ask you right now, and if you can't think of anything, it's fine. But do you know those two organizations?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I was to ask you, what's your opinion of them right now? How would you describe them in under 30 seconds? What would you say?
Well, I don't have an opinion. I mean, as a neutral, yeah, I don't know well enough to have an opinion.
So most people, if you ask that to the random person, would say they're bars. That would be the number one response you get is they're bars. Okay.
Yeah.
So the American Legion, the VFW, arguably the two most important nonprofits in the history of nonprofits, led the charge for all veteran benefits now, and they still do, but that's been forgotten. Most think they're bars for Vietnam, Korea era guys to talk about the good old days, and that is reality. Like that is still a part of it, but it's not like their purpose. It just happens to be a part of them. And so, obviously dozens of and hundreds and thousands of new nonprofits came out throughout the years. Some lasted, some didn't. And then around GWAT, so the start of GWAT, so the Global War on Terror, Iraq, Afghanistan, around the 2005 timeframe through 2010, we saw a surge of veteran nonprofits pop up. I'm tens and tens of thousands. The number is somewhere over the 50,000 range for veteran nonprofits. That's a lot of damn nonprofits. And the reason this is because everybody's transformation to civilian, to citizen, however you want to word this, is different. Everyone has something that they need in their transition. And a guy or girl will go through a nonprofit because they didn't get something from the VA they needed. And then that nonprofit, it was amazing. It helped them so much, but it was missing something. And so they're like, you know what? I've done one nonprofit trip. I'm going to start my own. And then they start their own. And then people go through theirs, but it's missing something. And so it's just like, and we see it every day. I've probably talked to 10 people this week who are starting a veteran nonprofit now, and so it's going to keep happening. But to the point is there's so many amazing things, but it's really on what you need. There's nonprofits that get vets into the outdoors, which I would say is probably the majority of nonprofits is getting vets back into the outdoors, because the outdoors scientifically have healing power. I mean, there's so many studies on this now, not for vets, for anybody. There's the grounding, the connecting more to your primal self and whatnot, however you want to word that. But there is healing in the outdoors, and whether that's you walking through Central Park because it's all you have, or you walking 50 miles into the backcountry of Montana with grizzly bears, that you get what you get. And so, the kind of like the wins. So let me say like wins that you see. I'm trying to give some good examples of some nonprofits and like what they're doing. So Project Healing Waters, they're a huge client of mine. The largest like fly fishing kind of associated veteran nonprofit. They serve 6,500 veterans a year, upwards of 8,000 sometimes, and they have programs in every state minus two, I believe. I think they don't have one in Louisiana anymore, and maybe Hawaii. But there's states that have multiple programs, and so they get guys behind device, tying flies, building rods, out fly fishing, and it's that everyone likes to think that the main media behind nonprofits is what that healing power is, but it really comes down to community and purpose. And so I know that's really what Project Healing Waters excels at, is giving you that community again, that brotherhood, that sisterhood. And so those are wins. You're getting this new group of people back together. May not work for everybody, but it is working for a lot. Okay. So we've hit one, community. Then you have other, like I'm going to hit the three topics that would lead to most veterans' mental health crisis issues: community, purpose, and service. Service and purpose kind of go hand in hand, but purpose is one that most forget about. They think it's like they need community, they think they need to serve, but a lot of it came down to purpose, right? Like when you join the military, it's embedded in you, like purpose, community, service, identity. You're given it all. There's no option to not get it. It is force fed into you. But you don't transit when you transition. They don't change that. They don't talk about, all right, how do we transform this into being a citizen? And and so organizations that give like more purpose is, organizations like off the top of my head, the Commit Foundation, Team RWB, who are some others here? I'm trying to think of nonprofits that actually are like heavily involved in the transformation, the transitioning process, where they're teaching you how to take your lessons learned from the military and go and have a new purpose to help either other veterans or civilians off of your learnings. And so it's not just like, I'm not going to go and apply to be a manager at a McDonald's and then teach the next generation of kids how to do that. That sure in a way could be a purpose, but it's not going to have the same impact of what I did in the military to then what I can do now at a different level. And so there's a billion nonprofits, right? And then you have True Wolf Foundation, real small, young. They get people into land stewardship, outside cleaning, working on public lands, so the kids and grandkids can use it. Anybody can
Yeah.
pick up trash, and then they go beyond by working on a lot of bigger projects. But there's a lot of things there, and I'll kind of connect. I'll end this answer with the Iron Freedom Foundation. The organization, to my understanding, exists on paper still, but I don't believe that they still operate. My best friend founded that organization, and we haven't spoken in a few years, sadly. Realistically, due to him not wanting to help himself, and he no longer will take my calls or anything because he feels betrayed by several of us that were on the board. This is a really unfortunate situation, but this is a sidebar. There's only so much you can do for somebody before they're in their own way. And as much money as we tried to raise or set aside for him to take care of himself, he refused to do that. And you can't help others unless you've helped yourself first. If you are
Yeah.
so set on helping others, you can. He refused to help himself. And it got so bad to the point where, he was really relying a lot on alcohol and um, at a bad level. And I'm not speaking ill of him by any means. He's an incredible human being with the biggest heart. And Will, if you ever heard this, I love you, brother. But I hope we can put this all behind us. But um, it started to affect him. It was affecting his marriage, the nonprofit, because he was in this hard place where he didn't want to work because he felt bad for not helping more veterans, but he didn't want to help more veterans because he felt bad for not working. And so he was in this hard place. But the work and impact that we had during my 5 years there as a board member, so I led all marketing and creative initiatives, and I did a lot of the vetting for the vets that came through our program, and we'd serve between 8 and 10 vets per trip, and we'd do 3 to 4 trips a year. And so, over the course of the few years I was there, we served about 75 plus veterans and had such lasting impacts on them in terms of community and really the community aspect and finding this new life, that there is a beautiful life to be lived when you get out, and a whole new life. Like, your service doesn't define you. And one of my favorite films that I ever did, called Weightless, followed a gentleman named Ben Parsons, Army infantryman, 2 deployments to Afghanistan. And at the, he's talking to his wife on the phone, and I was filming it, when they were talking, and it's him narrating it afterwards, or answering the question. But he says, I was talking to my wife, and she said that when we were on Skype or whatever it was, that she had never seen me so weightless. And, they had been like high school sweethearts, I believe, like together forever. And so okay, we've now lifted some level of weight. And then at the very end, he's talking about the outdoors. And so obviously this organization, very outdoor focused. He's talking about the outdoors, and he says, I've realized something, that everything in the outdoors has its place. The life of everything knows where it belongs. Even the death has a place in the outdoors. And I need to find where I fit into that. And it was, such a powerful thing hearing this. And to this day, it is without question my favorite film that I've ever done. not like technical speaking, there's so many things wrong with it now that I would do different, but from the messaging standpoint, it
Yeah.
was the first film that I was like, oh, this is what I'm really meant to do. And about 2 months after it released, I got a message on my Instagram that said, hey, I saw this film that you did about Ben, this guy named Ben, and I wanted to let you know I was planning on taking my life today. And I listened to what he said about going outside, and I just went out for a walk in the park figuring this would be my last walk, might as well get some fresh air. And all of a sudden I started paying attention to the little things, the sound of the birds and the water. And I realized like maybe I'd fit in somewhere here and I don't need to go this route. And I didn't save his life. This guy, he didn't, it's like a double negative. He
Yeah.
didn't commit suicide. I'm trying to figure out the right way to say that. He didn't
Yeah.
not commit suicide because of me, but because I gave Ben's story the window. So I gave
Yeah.
Ben the voice that the world would see. And so that's where like a lot of my thing is I don't care if it's the worst analytics. If it has 2 views and 1 life is saved, I'm stoked. And so it's
Yeah.
when I share other veteran stories, I want to share those stories so other veterans can be like, oh, there is hope. And
Totally.
that's such a thing
Totally.
where like people don't think there's hope anymore. And I'm seeing it I made a post the other day on LinkedIn, and I'm still mind boggled by the level of engagement that I saw from this post. It is still under the essence of posts viral. It I get a it it's insane. It has I just want to read these off because some of this is so important. It has almost 3,300 likes, almost 300 comments, 100 reposts, and it was me sharing a simple thing that because a lot of vets get caught up in this like I wasn't soft, I wasn't a SEAL. That means my story is irrelevant. My post blatantly was like I didn't get shot. There's a chance this is how you found me. I didn't get shot. I didn't step on an ID. My injuries didn't happen. It happened from a simple bottle of water. I have my own other issues from the deployment that I didn't discuss there, but I was specifically speaking to my main issues that are health focused. But hundreds of
Yeah.
comments that were like, I didn't realize other people were dealing with this. And my brain was like, how, brother? There's so many of us dealing with this. And so it's stuff like this. Like maybe this is why I'm trying to post more on LinkedIn for personal, is if my personal journey is showing others like, hey dude, I'm winning. Let's get you winning too, then I'm making a
Yeah.
difference.
I'm winning despite all these other ramifications that I'm dealing with. You're dealing with some of your own, and I'm dealing with mine. We're probably downplaying it because it feels inconsequential. We didn't actually get directly hit by something or shot by something, but man, there's all these other effects, and that's what I think I did find you through that
Yeah.
post. And just like my mind just opened to all the other people that are basically living their lives assuming they're the only ones. They're on their own. They're
Yes.
on an island and completely just like destitute of support or strength that comes from community, that first pillar, right? And
Yes.
that to me was like, you know what, let's get on a call. Let's do a quick podcast. Let's before
Yeah.
we even get to know each other, let's record this because we're going to get raw and authentic with this. And
Yeah.
there's a lot about my story that just resonates in terms of I've seen it and I've witnessed it personally. Like I've never been down to the depths of darkness where, like not living was brighter than living, right? And but for me that evokes a ton of compassion, a ton of empathy because I go back to my brother's mindset a lot when he was thinking about suicide before he took his life, throwing in the Google searches, how do I kill myself? And so when I did that in like 2015, Google was like, well, here's how you kill yourself. You could do this bridge or you could do this direction with, cutting your wrists. And I just thought, these algorithms are bad, but retargeting exists. So maybe we could get more predictive and maybe I could go down a direction of building technology and marketing. And ultimately, I started thinking about these prediction algorithms to get ahead of someone's challenges that way. And the problem was when I started Suicide Sucks as a nonprofit, I started finding people that were suicidal, and they were asking, "Well, can you help me?" Well, actually, I don't have any resources for you. I'm not a nonprofit that's really doing anything for those that are suicidal. I'm trying to figure out the technology and the platforms and try and connect more of these pieces together. But the problem was, as soon as I did that, I started finding lots of people that were struggling silently alone. And then at the end of the day, 60% of the people that complete suicide had already seen a doctor or a therapist within a week to 30 days of their death. So if that's the answer, is getting help and treatment that way, it's not real effective. 60% of people are still dying afterwards. So that, to me, that became a big problem. And so, I have a 10-year-old nonprofit that still exists, just kind of floating along, figuring out the solution to the problems. And at the end of the day, there have been some effective and really eye-opening learnings, right? So one of those that I want to share, especially because I feel like this audience will hit more of a veteran military or first responder audience, is that there are trauma treatments that don't take, detailing the story, that don't take talk therapy, you can actually just sit in your seat, visualize these memories that continue to haunt, continue to return. There's levels of either betrayal or traumas that have happened both emotionally, physically, that your brain has attached an emotional reaction to a video. And trauma modalities like accelerated resolution therapy, they go in there, they actually help you layer on new videos, which allows those neural connections to disconnect and allows the body to start to resolve those really pent up traumas. And so in 2 or 3 sessions, you'll see like 95% trauma reactivity just kind of go away. And the weightlessness that I hear officers, firefighters, military talking about after these trauma treatments is amazing. So acceleratedresolutiontherapy.com is basically where a lot of the military research and the evidence behind the modality is published. And you can find therapists around the country that have this modality and this training. But ultimately, to me, that's part of the problem. Is we have too many therapists doing talk sessions for unlimited number of sessions, where now it's got an inherent risk, financial risk, reputational risk, and just all these challenges of getting yourself to actually be willing to talk about your traumas. But at the end of the day, you don't have to. There's these advanced modalities that are effective. One officer said, "Look, I didn't have a memory. I had 10 years of crap, and I just bundled it all together, and in 3 sessions, I let it all go, and I was so relieved and weightless," use that term, that I didn't need to go back to the therapist. And if we can have more successful outcomes, and talking about these types of treatments that are effective for these really rough emotions and memories that we're kind of harnessing and harboring, what will happen to suicidality is that it will go away. Suicidality is not logical. It is biological. It is your brain saying, I've got too much pent up stacked on top of each other, and I need out. I need relief from this amount of pain that I cannot endure. And so really, if we think about suicidality in that way, we could definitely get more guys into qualified providers and more guys out to go and live their life with freedom.
For sure. So I want to, because it kind of sounds similar in a way. So I want to talk, reference this nonprofit. And there's a few that do it. But there's a nonprofit out there called Healing the Hero. And so they focus on these protocols, right? And so these trauma protocols, and there's another kind, and this could be faith-based or non-faith-based, so you could do it both ways. And so I've been through the program twice. So it's like this, it's like a Zoom call, FaceTime, Skype, whatever. And it's not you're not talking to a therapist and pouring out your soul. You're kind of just living in your head what needs to be done, and you follow this protocol. And it's so hard to describe it, but it is life altering. I mean, the testimonials that have came through it, people, they're done with life, go through this thing, whole new life, different human being. And so they do things like anxiety, trauma, resentment, pretty much everything there is. One of the protocols covers it. And the funniest way I could describe it would almost be like it's witchcraft, because you will genuinely after the session be like, how? Because they
Yeah.
start out, hey, I need you to get to this moment, right? Go to the first moment of this, where this is how you felt. You get there. How does it feel to be in that moment? Usually you're somewhere pretty high up on the negative scale. And then you go through this protocol and they're like, all right. And a lot of it is like involving like, go back to childbirth. Did you feel this way at childbirth? No. And then you go to these different, you go to it and you're teaching yourself
Yeah.
learnings in a way. And then you're going forward and telling yourself these learnings, right? And then at the end, you go into the future and you see if you can find it there. And I kid you not. So I suffered for the past about 2 years with debilitating anxiety. Couldn't tell you where it came from. One day I had normal anxiety like every human being, but I had an anxiety that was preventing me from driving, from doing certain things. And it eventually evolved into my anxiety was just a fear of anxiety. And so there was no, we've still yet to be able to pinpoint when or why it started. It could have to do with some of my health issues and my vagus nerve being severed. But I went through this program twice. I went through it with another nonprofit, which is founded by the same guy, and then the newer nonprofit. And it truly is life changing. Like the way that you sleep, for example, I went from average 7 to 11 minutes of deep sleep a night. Your body is dying. Like your body needs deep sleep to heal. And I had seven, maybe 20 if I was lucky, minutes of deep sleep a night for years. And then I started doing cold therapy. My deep sleep went up to like 25, 30 minutes. Still nowhere near good enough. And then I went through this program. And the first night she's like, you're going to sleep. You may crash really hard. And I'm like, yeah, I bet, lady. And she's like, I'll text you in the morning. And I wake up, I monitor my sleep with a watch, and it may not be the most accurate, but they pretty damn good nowadays. And so I wake up and I had an hour and 40 minutes of deep sleep, and I had felt so unbelievably well. I'm used to waking up every 5 to 10 minutes, and now I wake up every few hours. But unless I'm in a flare up from my physical health issues, which will keep me up. But for that week following that, every night my deep sleep got more and more to where I ended up having one night where my deep sleep was almost just under 3 hours of deep sleep, which is unbelievable. And so it's like my body was trying to heal and catch up after all the years of being in this fight or flight. And so I've gone back through it again, and my deep sleep's great. So healing the hero.
What neuroscience is deep sleep is your REM sleep patterns. Your eyes moving side to side, and your brain is trying to heal itself through that mechanism. Yeah, it sounds like you had a great therapist, and that's the power. That's the power of a trauma therapist that has this knowledge and skill set. But not every therapist has that, and many of them don't, right? And so, having someone go to a talk therapist, for example, that's really just going to try and drudge up the past and not really resolve those memories. Or a lot of military guys are going south of the border, trying different chemicals.
I have a lot of friends who've done that.
Yeah, there's relief, but how long does it last, right? Because those memories are still there, and you're not actually resolving anything. So we see a lot of resurgence, right, with ketamines and other material-based stuff. But the point is that the science, the neuroscience, even the understanding. I'm not saying there's not a place for the ketamines and these other psychedelics and other materials, but we need more understanding of how these work and when they should be applied at the right time for the right person. But just getting the current levels of success, more awareness to the guys that need it, and letting them know the repercussions that you think are going to happen. They aren't going to happen unless you're active, and then there's a whole nother challenge being active duty and getting help to those guys. So. That's another challenge. But everybody else that's already out, there's no reason why anybody that's outside of the military active duty should be, excluding themselves from deserving to get to wellness. Just change the oil in your vehicle. Change. Go in and get some maintenance on your brain if you feel and recognize those signs that you're needing it. And honestly, the lack of sleep is a big sign that you need to go in and have some memories resolved.
Yeah. And no, here's the thing. like I said earlier in the conversation, there's so many nonprofits helping vets. And the number one thing that you hear from guys, because I've heard it a million times, and I'll be the first to say I do it too, but is somebody else needs it more than me. If
Oh,
anyone says
totally.
that to me, I know they need it more than the other. They need it more. And so, like, what people don't, a lot of people still haven't realized, almost every nonprofit is free to the veteran. And so, like, Healing the Hero, if you're a veteran, first responder, or the spouse or dependents of that, if you are, because spouses get vicarious trauma all the time. So
Oh
why
yeah.
therapists
Oh,
need
yeah.
therapists. If you, spouse, law enforcement, kid, military, whatever, free. It's free. Your whole family go through it because they get vicarious trauma through your anger and your aggression. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I really actually would love to put you in contact with Dan Jarvis. I served with him in Afghanistan, and the reason he started this was because he went through his journey, and I know, I don't want to speak for him, but I know I've heard it in, a few times is my roommate, Doug Cordo, who was killed in Afghanistan on our deployment. I know Dan, he kind of felt like it was, his fault. Or he just had, I know, again, I don't want to speak for Dan, so if you're listening, brother, sorry. But I know he had a lot of trauma around Cordo's death. And,
Yeah.
and so he got out, went the law enforcement route, which is what I made a post about this too, what every veteran, especially combat guys, are told, hey, brother, all that there is for you to be a cop, which is so false. If you want, sure, it's an amazing, we need more good people in uniform. But
Right.
he became a sheriff, and that ain't helping in his trauma. He's seeing more of the bad. And then he finally
Yep.
was like at a breaking point, and he was there at that breaking point. He found some help through this trauma protocol, and then he started some nonprofits that get out there and do this. And now he's spending his time traveling across the country teaching these protocols to different law enforcement agencies, to universities, because he doesn't want to gatekeep this. The whole damn world needs to heal it so we can heal the world. Let's heal
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Spread the
Misery loves
word, brother.
company. I know that's a thing, but like,
Yeah.
man, you don't need to be miserable. There's
Yeah. Right.
there's a time and place, but there is a beautiful life to be lived. There's more purpose after service. There's always a way forward. The only way is forward.
Absolutely. And I think it comes down to everyone has immense amount of worth. You know what I mean? Like if anyone, going back to that comment of like somebody needs it more than me. Well, do you need it? Like then you need it, right? And
Right.
you have enough worth that you're not any less worthy of the love and the getting taken care of as anybody else. And I think it's hard for men to hear that, but like telling each other that you have worth to each other, that creates a bond, and it's easier to hear it from someone that's served alongside you or been in the shoes that you've been in. And so ultimately it's about really, the work that we're doing and just sharing stories is really important. And it just has to continue to go on, and sharing not just the sorrow and the grieving and the heart wrenching stories, but the wins. Like we kind of started this whole thing off, is it's important that we recognize there's a brighter future than the past.
Yeah.
And that's important for anyone that's feeling a level of darkness and suicidality, that you got to believe it. That's going to get better. There are solutions, there are opportunities, and there's purpose for you to be had and for you to create. Get out there and go create, go make good things happen. And I think the universe will respond. God will respond. He'll help you get found and get you connected to the right resources. As long as you're not willing to give up on yourself, he's not going to give up on you.
No, 100%. 100%.
Cool, man. What do you think? Is that enough?
Sure. I mean, yeah, we keep riffing. I probably should be packing my house. I closed on a house today, and we haven't even packed the house that we're about to move in. We haven't packed this house to get into that new house. So, but yeah, dude, I could talk about, about veteran issues, mental health, and all that for days. But no, I think we definitely nailed some great points.